Welcome to part one of a special five-part podcast series on the use of data analytics and compliance. In part one, we asked the question, what's the hype with generative AI and ChatGPT in compliance? Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back with Vince Walden for another episode. Vince, welcome back.
Thank you, Tom. Glad to be here.
So, Vince, I want to pose a question to you. Generative AI and ChatGPT in compliance, what's all the hype?
Yeah, oh my gosh. It's indeed all the hype and all the topic of all the conferences going on. And we're saying, what the heck is it and how it's going to be used in compliance? I definitely have a point of view around it's going to make things easier. It's ChatGPT is certainly not going to replace the compliance professional. There's pitfalls to avoid, and we've seen some mistakes that people have been used when they over rely on it. But in this episode, I'd love to just give your audience a flavor for what it is not and some practical use cases that we've seen, really make compliance monitoring, I'll say, better, cheaper, faster. There's some really exciting things, especially for those that use traditional dashboards to review data, whether you're reviewing in Tableau or Power BI or Click or what have you. Instead of clicking, my prediction is in the next 6 months to a year, and here's my prediction, you will no longer be clicking, and you will be interacting with bots using generative AI to push the dashboard, no longer just having to click around. And I'm going to show you a demo on our podcast today, Tom. I'm really excited to show your audience.
Vince, you started talking about that publicly back, at least I saw it at Compliance Week 2023 in May. And it was a very exciting demonstration. So I'd like to ask if we could maybe go to that now.
Sure.
You could show the audience what you're talking about.
Sure. Let me show you. And again, we'll talk about what ChatGPT is and isn't and how it's generating content. But the idea is when you can point the data, when you can point ChatGPT to your own data set and build rules around it, you get some really interactive data sets and you can have it command some really interesting findings. So here, what I'll do is I'll share my screen, and this is used in an example where we're looking for third-party payments. We're looking for improper payments around bribery and corruption or around fake vendor schemes, conflicts of interest, etc. And look how we'll be pointing it to. So I'm going to share my screen and click share. So check this out, Tom. You're going to like this. And I might even, in the interest of time, I might even scoot my video forward a little bit. But this is how chatbots will change compliance. It's pretty interesting. So what you're going to see, I'll skip the login page because you got to log in into the app. But what you're going to see is your traditional dashboard, right? This is 177,000 invoices, 8,000 vendors spread out geospatially. But the bot then pops up and says, hey, I've got 3 strange transactions. What would you like me to do? And the bot will give you options, recommendations on what you might want to do. Where were these suspicious transactions headed? And again, we've selected that. It goes in and zooms into this, in this case, China. And then it's going to ask, all right, what would you like to do now? You want to email these transactions to a supervisor, create a case. You could calculate the total amount for this amount. And it knows the bot is talking to the back-end database and then telling the dashboards what to do. And again, to demonstrate that it calculates the database, it's going to sum up those transactions. So how material is it? It's $5,000, 3 payments of $5,000 equivalent. All right, show me those transactions. And then it goes and tells the dashboard, go get those transactions for me. But again, I could do all these things by clicking or by navigating around, but it's so nice having a chatbot feature guide you through it. And as compliance professionals, you could then guide the risks and you could put parameters around it. So when you have review teams of 20 or 30 people, they could all follow a set review structure. And all this without the data having to ever leave the platform. And that's key. Data privacy and making sure you're not sending your data to OpenAI or third parties is key. And so that's a little taste of the dashboards. And we'll talk about how then as you do this, it will continue to learn and get smarter. Was that transaction helpful? Yes or no? And that's that taste of what the future looks like when we think about dashboards and OpenAI. And it's really exciting.
Vince, maybe we could step back to take a 35 or 40,000 foot view on your thoughts on just the basic use of AI and ChatGPT for compliance. In addition to what you've just showed us, you see a broader use for maybe a qualitative use as opposed to a quantitative use as well?
Yeah. So what I was showing you is how we could use generative AI and chatbots to navigate our compliance monitoring functions. But ChatGPT and generative AI, and let me first define it. So generative AI is the category of technologies that that point to what's called an LM, which is not a law degree. It's called a large language model that points to a large language model such as the internet and indexes all those words so that it can pull intelligent information together. ChatGPT is probably one of the most popular. It's Microsoft has a version, which again, Microsoft's one of the co-founders, I think, of it. They just launched a business version, which actually I haven't seen yet. It just recently launched. But even Google has a generative AI version called Bard. I think it's BARD that you can subscribe to. So it's not only ChatGPT, and I think you're going to see more players come in the market to compete with it. You'll also see the talks of litigation. When ChatGPT goes out and indexes the entire internet, that means they've indexed your content, Tom. They've indexed my content. Anything public they've indexed. Is that legal? And again, I'm not a lawyer, but I can't really. That's a hard question to ask. And so there's obviously litigation as to whether what they did was in fact legal. Did they violate copyright laws? But that's for someone else to decide. Right now, I think the cat's out of the bag and there's no way you're putting it back in because ChatGPT is here to stay.
Vince, what do you see as some of the either pitfalls or potential pitfalls of ChatGPT?
Yeah, and when you go and use ChatGPT, again, the unstructured use cases. Hey, if I need a policy written, if I could say, hey, ChatGPT, write me a compliance policy for the oil and gas industry. And I did a presentation at the ACFE conference last June in Seattle. And I said, in front of the audience, I said, write me a fraud risk management program or write me definition of forensic data analytics. And you know what? It wrote pretty darn good. In 30 seconds, it writes me like a 7 or 8 paragraph essay on what is forensic data analytics, and it was spot on. The problem, though, is I'm still responsible for, if I put that out as my content or as my paper, I'm still responsible. I feel sorry for the students that are going into college now, and they're going to be asked to write a paper, and they're going to use ChatGPT to write their research paper. Because here's the problem, Tom. It sometimes makes up false statements. So yes, it's pretty darn good in the output, but it might cite it might cite something that it claims is factual, which is not. There's a well-known case that people laughed about where it was plaintiff's attorney and the plaintiff was suing an airline for misuse. We've all had this done in the cart when they serve drinks. The cart bumped someone's elbow and hurt their elbow, so they sued him. And the plaintiff tried to cite all these cases that using GPT that never existed. And the judge just went off on this attorney. What a lack of what a malpractice. But the point being, you're responsible for what you put into ChatGPT, and you cannot just use that output and give it to somebody and claim it as yours. You got to fact check it.
Let me see if I can rephrase that a little bit, because I, like many people, laughed at that example. It's well known when it came out, but actually I think it's a very good learning point, Vince, and it's the following. ChatGPT, as you have saw in your presentation, can give you a decent to very good first draft.
Yes.
But it's just a first draft. And the lawyer's example was, I don't know, it was the same in the forensic accounting world when you grew up. When I grew up in the legal world, associates wrote those first drafts. And
Yeah.
you darn well better have checked every citation before you turned it over to the partner, because they would.
Right.
And if you had an incorrect citation or a wrong citation, you would get castigated. And so that's how I view ChatGPT. It's going to give me a first draft, but absolutely, I'm responsible. I have to read it. And in the terms of, or a case of a policy or procedure, I have to know what the answer is.
Yeah.
I
No
can't
doubt.
read it to get the answer. And I find it to be a good first draft, but it's just that. And that's why I think, on reflection, laughing less at the lawyer for being so stupid and more at, if you put something down, check it, make sure it's right before you turn it into the partner.
Yeah.
Because I got castigated on that
Yeah.
a lot.
You own it. Yeah. If it's your paper, you own it. And that's right. Yeah. Would you trust your first year associate out of college on an important case without you checking it? Of course you wouldn't. And if you treat ChatGPT like that, there's so many great applications for it and again, most of it's been used in an unstructured data context, helping come up with policy, creative writing, etc. But as you think about this idea of pointing the data to large language models or LLMs and looking at even accounting data, as I showed, it indexes transactional data quite good. You got to still use the rules. Like in the case that I showed you, I still processed it through hundreds of anti-fraud and anti-corruption algorithms through my KonaAI platform. But once those rules were made, then ChatGPT could understand it and then make sense out of it. So it's not like you can just point it at it blank. You got to give it some structure. But once you do, gosh, it's going to be really cool in the coming, I'll say months now, but years, as we help companies really start using chatbots to navigate their compliance monitoring. And it's going to make it easier.
Vince, were you able to create the rules and the structure for the inquiries you make with the KonaAI tool that you can use again and the machine can learn, or do you have to make a bespoke creation for each customer or client?
No, there are common, again, over the years we've built, and this has been working with scores of companies back in my Big Four accounting days and my investigation days. We've built this library of hundreds of anti-fraud tests around conflicts of interest, segregation of duties, anti-corruption, you name it. And so those automatically get poured in and scored into the platform. And that's the starting point. And then for each customer then can go in and customize each test, because every company is different. There's different risk thresholds, there's different dollar thresholds, there's different little things that you want to tweak. So it's a customization effort is phase 2. And then we have a conversation around the chatbots to say, all right, what's your review strategy? Is it just you reviewing, or do you have 6 or 7 compliance directors around the world? Do they need to get their cut of the data and only review their regions? And then, all right, what do you want to have them review? The top risk scoring transactions? Do you want to look for sensitive keywords? Do you want to look specifically around bribery and corruption or conflicts of interest? It's really having a discussion around their risk assessment and coming up with a plan, and then orderly slicing and carving the data out in line with that risk assessment. It's really cool. And as chatbots come out, instead of clicking, you'll have a structured way to have large teams review data on a consistent basis.
You anticipate that the tool will be able to actually propose some remedial steps as well?
Yes, and as you saw, it gave recommendations on what would you like to do. Would you like to email these? Would you like to see the amount? Would you like to do this? There will be, as it learns and as you tag it, it's going to ask, were those 3 transactions that I showed you, were they relevant? Yes or no? And so by doing that, it will learn. Many attorneys that have done email review are familiar with technology assisted review. That was a big deal 10 years ago. But technology assisted review still is alive and well, not only in the emails and unstructured data world, but very much so in the structured and the forensic accounting world. And looking at high risk transactions, saying, find me more like this. When the chatbot says, would you like me to find more like this? Yes. And it'll serve them up for you. So it's all on the horizon, and we're not very far away.
Vince, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time for this episode. But before I go, I wanted to ask you, if our listeners wanted more information, what would be the best place to go?
Oh, you can visit our website at KonaAI.com, request information. You can see some of our chat videos. You can also email me directly, Vince V. Walden at KonaAI.com, or my director of sales, Matt Lauer, MLOWERE at KonaAI.com. We're out there, and again, our information's on our website.
Well, Vince, I wanted to thank you again for taking the time to visit with me, and I look forward to continuing this conversation.
Thank you, Tom. Have a great day.
This is Tom Fox again. I hope you'll join Vince Walden and I for our next episode of Profiles of Corrupt Payments on Data Analytics Week on Data-Driven Compliance.